Alright, I begin again. For those who basically missed the other video, I basically already did a prodigy list for the strength and dexterity tier prodigies. You can basically go check that one out for, why I basically have all this basically right here. But for now, for this video, I'm going to basically cover the constitution and the magic prodigies. So, let's get to it. Alright, so the first constitution prodigy here is basically Armour of Shadows. And I never actually really used Armour of Shadows myself, but from the looks of it, it basically looks to be like, a fairly, average basically prodigy to say the least. It basically requires you to deal 50k darkness damage, which is basically, similar to say like, Ears of the Sun. If you have the damage element, then great, you'll be able to get it easily. If not, then you have to basically work for a little bit, but it's fine, you'll get it eventually. The idea of like, Armour of Shadows here is that basically when you're basically on the tile, which you basically unlight by like, using darkness damage to basically unlight your tile and the hardest tile when you basically use it, it'll basically give you increased armor, hardiness, and evasion. And outside of that, it'll basically passively increase your stealth. Now, Armour of Shadows is just like, I never really found that like, physical damage is basically what kills me in most games. And, it is useful basically if you have that sort of issue, I guess, but really it's basically usually like the casters and stuff like that to really kill you in this game, not like, the physical like threats. In many ways, like, it's not bad, like, prodigy, I guess, because if you have, like, a detriment to, like, physical, like, damage, then this will help you mitigate that, or if you're able to use your armor against, like, elemental threats, there's that too. But I'm not really sure there's basically a lot of, like, characters that basically can make use of Armor Shadows, and that's basically, like, the main, like, draw against it. It does sound like, it's like it could be good if, like, that's a thing, but Armor Shadows is really just one of those, like, D tier towns to me. It's just one of those towns, like, it could be good. It probably can be good. It's just like, when is it good? It's like sort of like Massive Blow here. It's like, Massive Blow can be good, but, is it like, is it worth picking over something else? Alright, so, I'm not going to talk about Armor Shadows too much because I never actually used it myself, but, let's go talk about Constitution. Bloodspring. So, this requires that you let Melinda be sacrificed, which means it requires you to go into the Dark Crypt and go through 5 levels of the Dark Crypt and let Melinda be sacrificed. And then you have to fight the boss that basically pops out from that. Not the easiest thing to do, or the most recommended thing to do, so there's that, just to keep in mind. Now, this is basically a passive one that basically goes off when you basically, like, hit for, like, 50% of your life. And it'll basically, like, go on cooldown for 12 turns. The idea here is that basically when you hit for 50% of your life, it'll create a 4-turn blood wave that basically knocks stuff back. And that'll basically deal blight damage, and it'll basically heal you for half your damage dealt. It sounds like a cool idea, but the thing is, like, when you're basically going to be, like, really benefiting from it is the thing, right? This is really, like, more like a project is, like, more useful for, like, enemies than it is for you. So, it's really one of those projects that, like, it should be in the game. It should be left in the game probably as is, but it's just not that useful really to, like, use basically as, like, a player. I mean, the blight damage will basically usually do damage on everything that is undead, and it'll basically, like, heal you, which is, like, nice. But you're probably not going to be, like, facing against stuff like, as like a melee character, like, you knock him back, wanting to knock him back. And if it's like, a caster character, then, like, I suppose it might be more useful for a caster character, I guess, but, there's probably, like, better defensive prodigies you want to basically get than this, because there's always a chance that, like, knockback will occur. So, yeah, it's basically, like, it's a talent that basically should be left as is, but, I mean, it's one of the weaker talents for sure. I'd probably throw it, like, around here, in D tier. Like, it could be made to be, like, a little bit more worthwhile to, like, players. I mean, especially if you have to go for a Dark Crypt to get too, is that. So, yeah. A little bit, like, on the weak side for, like, what basically offers, for, like, the reward. Corrupted Shell. Alright, so Corrupted Shell basically requires you to receive 3.5 light damage, which is not hard to do. It also requires that you complete the Fall of Ziggur and keep the Grand Corruptor alive. So, this requires that you basically, like, aren't anti-magic, and it also requires that you basically don't kill the Grand Corruptor, so there's that as well. And then, after that, you also have to kill, like, the Ziggurites, so there's that too. Now, this does give you like a fairly sizable amount of life, and armor hardiness, and armor, and defense, and saves. And that's basically all useful stuff. But here's the thing, like, is it like, really worthwhile, at the stage of the game where you're basically getting it? I'm not basically, it's very unlikely that you're going to basically like, complete like, the Fall of Ziggurat quest before, like, say, like, you face the Master. And like, if you do basically complete it before, like, face the Master, then like, I guess it's like 500 extra life, but there's probably better prodigies you can use against the Master. And like, beyond that. In the grand scheme of things, 500 life isn't really that useful, like, in a later game. And you basically have to, like, get to at least the mid game in order to, like, benefit from this prodigy. So that's basically going to require, like, you're probably past level 25. So the life really isn't that great. The armor hardness is basically a nice little thing as well as the armor. But again, as I already said for like Armor of Shadows, I never really found it like, armor is basically like, your physical threats are basically what really kills you. It's basically like, the spellcasters. And then like defense and all saves is like, a nice little bonus, I guess. But I mean, and like higher difficulties, that's basically not going to like, really save you because, they're going to penetrate your like saves and defense like nothing to higher like, to your enemies. So there's that too. Corrupted Shell is basically like, it could be buffed up to be a little bit more. It's not bad before what it basically is. I mean, it's better than like, a lot of the other talents basically here. I probably like prefer it basically in like, this category around here, for example. But I mean, it's just one of those talents that like, it could be like a little bit stronger for what it basically offers, but it's like not bad, but yeah, I probably should put it like below here for example. So I'll throw it like that. Now I'll keep it like this. I really don't like the fact that they used to do so much for like the Legacy and the Lawrence, so that's why I'm just putting it so low. But whatever. All right, Draconic Body. I usually consider Draconic Body to be like a very powerful like prodigy to basically get. It would probably be a Wormic or like consume like the Samurai Heart and like the Worm Bile, which means you don't get it for a while unless you're a Wormic. But basically what this does is if you have a lot of HP, it basically lets you heal like 40% of your life when you're basically below 30% of life. Which is like a nice little way of like, keep you alive, like, you take like a big hit, and like, you're doing other stuff. The only real problem, like, with Draconic Body is that, like, it does have that sort of like, 15 turn, like, cooldown, which means a lot of stuff can basically happen in that 15 turns. But at the same time, I wouldn't want to basically change this prodigy because it's basically on like Aaron, who's basically like, the Sun Paladin from like, the Maj'Eyal side of like the game, and she's basically already like, tanky, right? And if you have to consider she's basically going to appear basically in like, the Orc campaign as well. Really just like one of those like, it's a nice little like, thing to basically keep things alive. It would be nice to be a little bit stronger, I think, but it's not bad for where it basically is. It's more useful than say Bloodspring for sure, so I probably would say it's at least C tier. Probably like a little bit better than like, this one as well, because when you're basically in an oh shit moment, this basically helps keep you alive just a little bit more. So there's that going for it as well. I'm not sure if basically heal basically counts towards other stuff. There's basically like, there's like basically when he's like, abilities where you basically get healed, like, you basically like, get benefit from being healed, but not really sure about that. Alright, the next one to basically talk about is Eternal Guard. So, I note that Eternal Guard is probably like, a very underrated, like, prodigy. Basically the idea here is that basically lets your block last like 1 turn longer, and it does that when it's basically hits, so basically if there's like multiple enemies basically attacking you, you can be guaranteed to all have to basically like, face the counter strike for it, which is very nice. I can see this being like very useful in like characters that basically make use of like counter strikes a lot. So Stoneworm would probably be one. Bulwark of course is like, possibly another one. Stuff like that. Basically having like, extra counter strikes basically means you do more damage to sort of like make up for like, your lack of damage. Really, if you compare up of like, powerful attack afterwards, so you put up your Eternal Guard, for example, and then like you hit with like, a nice follow-up like, super attack, basically to like do like massive damage results. It can't be like understated. The only problem here is that basically this requires you basically have a shield. So you're basically restricted to like, only shield like, oriented like sort of characters. And on top of that, it basically also requires like, you have like a good like, counter strike basically, to follow up with. So that's the only problem like your Eternal Guard. It's not a bad prodigy for sure. I'd probably prefer to say like, in B tier. Probably around like where like, flexible combat basically is. And that's basically where I'd probably be happy to basically say it is. Alright, Fungal Blood. So, this requires that you have to use infusions, so you can't be undead for this one. And the idea is that it's basically sort of like, a passive active ability. Essentially, while this is basically like, available, you'll basically store fungal power when you basically use infusions. So basically use like regeneration, wild infusion, stuff like that. And when you basically activate it, you'll basically heal and remove the magical effects using like fungal power. So this basically gives you like, an extra option for like keeping yourself alive. Now, this is really one of those things that like, if like I did like more than this remove magical effects, it might be a little bit more useful. But it's just like a little bit like, less useful as a result of that. So it's really one of those like, lacking prodigies that really need to be like, buffed up a little bit. To sort of like, keep in mind like, the other stuff that's basically available. And it's unfortunate because I really like the idea of having inscription-based like, prodigies, but this one seems to be like, boosted up to be a lot better, I think. And it's also the fact that you have to use like inscriptions in like, infusion inscriptions on top of that, to basically keep in mind. So it's just basically one of those like, one of those like F tier prodigies, I think, again, to say the least. So let's throw it right down there. Alright, never stop running. So never stop running is basically requires you to use 20 levels of stamina using talents. So you play like a bulwark or like, a berserker who basically has stamina based talents, you get 20 of them, and boom, you can basically get never stop running. It also works on, say, like, a Shadow Blade if you get to, the more physical ones, but, there's that too. Now, how this basically works is they basically turn it on, and each turn is basically on, it'll basically, like, drain, like, 12 stamina, but you can basically move wherever you want to. So it's sort of like a free, like, movement infusion that basically lets you get where you need to go. And this basically ignores, like, detrimental like speed effects that basically might be effective with. So if you basically are playing like, say, a ghoul that basically has like, reduced like movement speed, this will basically let you make up for that lack of like speed. And if you're basically slowed by detrimental effects, that also like, helps as well, because the enemies don't like take their turn, but they're basically like, stuck in like, limbo while you're basically doing your like, never stop running ability. So yeah, it basically goes in here a little bit. The thing about this one is that it has that cost of like 10 stamina and basically uses 12 stamina per turn. So you have to really know when you have to basically use this talent as a thing. The thing about never stop running is that like, if you know like, in hindsight that you actually have to use it, that's really great. But if you don't know like when to actually use this talent, or if like, you use up too much stamina basically doing other stuff, it's basically going to be like a bit of a waste to basically pick this up. It does have a cooldown of 8 though, so it's basically like, very, very fast at least for that purpose. And it might be useful in say like a hire, for example, if they like do like their like little like racial trait to basically like lets them like never use resources and stuff like that. But yeah, never stop running. It's basically one of those traits that like is very niche. It's not terrible or anything. It's just like the cost for is like requires that you basically have to know what you're basically doing with it. I'd say it's probably down here in like the D tier because it could be made a whole lot better than what it basically currently is, but it's not bad where it is either, so it just needs to be like, maybe like reduce the stamina cost to give us some other like abilities to basically make up for like, all that like lost stamina. Or maybe you used to never stop running, basically get bursts to like, stamina basically work with, so, there's that too. More utility would be nice in this, and that'd be nice, I think. And it's unfortunate because I do like the fact it's like mobility prodigies, it's not really a great one. Alright, so, Spine of the World. I really hate this prodigy. This is actually a prodigy I think that could be debuffed. So, to throw it right out there, this is another one of those like prodigies that like, it's an S tier, I think. Yeah, throw it right there. So, Spine of the World is actually like a prodigy that's basically on the final boss for the Orc campaign. And basically that prodigy basically makes it so like, he can't be hit by physical effects, which is super annoying if you're playing any sort of like, character that's basically like, revolving around, physical abilities. So, as you can basically see here, you'll basically hit something for, him for like a physical effect, like the final boss, and then for 5 turns you can hit him for another effect. So, Spine of the World is basically like a very, very powerful prodigy, to say the least, and it basically always goes off because it's basically a passive. So, once it basically goes off, it's basically going to like, stay there for a while. It's really one of those prodigies that really should be like a sustain that like, you can knock off, or at least have like a cooldown basically on top of it, so like, you can't basically like, abuse it like, it basically is. Really, it's like, too powerful what it basically offers. And for the players too, basically, like, this is like a free way of like, avoiding like, additional physical sustains basically hitting yourself. So, you basically can focus on say like mental or like natural effects as opposed to like, the various physical effects you might take in like the long term. you can even like downplay. You need to get like stun resistance or stuff like that as well, because as long as you're basically able to remove like that first like physical threat, you have to worry about the ones that follow, so to speak. So super powerful. Definitely one of the more broken like prodigies that needs to be nerfed a little bit, I think. All right, so subcutaneous metallization. This requires you to basically get Thick Skin 5, and it basically is a passive for like 12 turn cooldown. So the idea of like this one is it basically reduces your life when you're basically below, when you're reduced to life below 50% of your total life, it'll basically increase all your damage done. Basically reduce like all the incoming damage by like 100% of your constitution. So you basically have less of a chance of dying. So I note that some characters in this game they get like a really big boost when they're basically like, below like certain thresholds of health. And like if you consider the fact to basically pair this up with say Draconic Body, this will basically let you like bounce back pretty like well to keep on going in a fight, especially in say like the final boss fights where like it gets really bad. The thing about like this one is basically keeps you alive, just prodigy, and that's very useful. But the fact is that like it's basically a lot of like burst damage that basically like, final bosses can do and stuff like that, and like even though it basically has like a flat amount of damage like being like reduced to, it would be so much better if like say just like say like a percentage basically like amount of damage I think or something like that, because you just take so much damage in like the longer game where like this really matters. It's like a not bad idea like this like prodigy, but it's just it could be like not like flat rate but like just percentage rate at this point I think, and maybe like increase like the cooldown to be like longer if that's the case, like to make it like more worthwhile. But one of these prodigies that basically like it's a nice like sort of idea, but it could be like rebalanced a little bit I think. So that's definitely one of the prodigies I think is like an F tier one, but I would like to see like change and like upgrade. So not bad, bad for like the idea, it's just like bad for execution. All right, so that's basically all the Constitution like prodigies. Not by the way, I don't have as much experience like the Constitution prodigies. I basically only really experienced like Bloodspring, Corrupted Shell, Draconic Body, and I guess Spine of the World myself. Considering the fact that I basically fought a boss that had it, and it was just insane to fight him. But for most part, these like are like all based in Constitution. Constitution is basically like the weakest like stat base to like invest in this game. So I don't usually like look at these ones for that reason. But whatever. That's basically another thing to keep in mind. Because like these are all like based on Constitution stat, they aren't like they aren't really like worth like considering for that reason, because unless you have the gear for it, you're not usually like trained to stat in like most character builds. So this is definitely like something like the project that could be buffed just for that reason alone, because it make it more appealing to basically buff a Constitution stat as a result of it. But whatever. Let's move on to magic, I guess. So we have magic Aether Permeation. Have been exposed to the void of space, visit the Abashed Expanse, Fearscape Cannon, Orbital Fearscape, Platform, Steering Halls, or Anteroom of Agony. So when you basically like go for this prodigy, you're basically gonna sustain, and the idea of it is basically while being sustained, it will basically like basic result is like if you're basically dispelled by like effects, this will actually go in first as opposed to like all your sustains, which is very useful if you basically have all the sustains you want to basically keep on yourself. For example, for just to throw it out there, if you have like say like that like prodigy and like Iris of the Sun, Iris of the Sun is like a dispellable prodigy that can be like taken off your character if you're like you're dispelled by it. So this will basically go first before that goes, which is nice. Anyhow, the idea is like basically like you're basically protected from like dispel attempts, which is very nice. And like if you basically have like sustains that like make your character, you don't want to basically going off. So this basically helps for that purpose. In the future, for example, I can see this possibly being useful in like other characters as well as a reworked. One to basically keep in mind would be say the cursed. So I'll note that the cursed in this game are like more like passive like characters, and like there's like some talk based about making it so that they have like more sustains in like their character build. Like basically have like sustains for surge, repel, and like cleave I think it basically is. So they basically like have to use like more like active abilities basically in their like repertoire. But anyhow, on certain characters that are basically currently available right now, like the Archmage, just basically keeps you from like losing all your sustains all at once, and even like some like the other like characters as well is very important. You also get like the bonus of raw power, raw spell power, which is very nice as well. So it's a little bit niche right now, this one, but as the game basically like gets its like characters and classes improved a little bit more, because they're always improving the classes and characters, this will get better. So Aether Permeation, this is probably like a solid like C tier again. My headset went off there for a little bit. Where is it? C tier. You know, I think I'm actually gonna say this is actually B tier one right here, right behind like you shall be my weapon. It's like it's definitely gonna get like improved as you go along here. So I'm actually kind of like satisfied putting it like up there because it's a little bit better than the other stuff down here. I think definitely like an underrated one for sure. So let's put it in the middle range for stuff. All right, Arcane Application Drone. Now I never actually used like this like project right here. But basically, the idea of like Arcane Application Drone is that like you can basically amplify like damage on the drone, basically hit stuff in its radius and do like, a lot of damage that way. So if you basically line up, you basically do like a lot of damage results. So to get it, you have to basically you gain the Tales of Spellblaze achievement. So that basically means you go to like the Shaloran like Elvira capital, read all the the Tales of Spellblaze lore there, and like current difficulty and permanent settings. So you basically have to have like that basically done first. So this basically lasts for 10 turns, and it basically creates an Arcane Application Drone at the selected location for 3 turns. Now the idea here is that basically when you hit that drone, it's basically going to ripple out a bunch of like arcane damage of the initial hit in a radius of 4. So basically you plant the drone down, and then like you use like a spell to hit basically the drone and your target, and basically do like lots of extra damage to resolve it. So this is like a very tactical one, and basically pull it off is like very, very useful for our purpose. And its use speed is instant, its travel speed is instant, and like here's like some of the properties right here. So same faction as player, but hostile personal reaction can be targeted and attacked by all player spells. So basically, you can be like hit with like friendly fire safe spells and still hit it. No attacks will actually damage the drone. There's no risk of killing it early. It can be used as a blocking unit due to above. Will not aggro from inactive enemies by itself, so that's nice to do as well. Can aggro enemies that see the drone attacking other enemies. Can attract enemy aggro after you're woken by any means. Will only identify damage that is directly attributed to the player and identify as a spell due to limitation in the game code. Blah blah. The amplified damage will not harm the player, but can hurt friendly or neutral enemies like escorts. So you have to watch out for that. You can't really use it against escorts, but that's fine. It's something to sort of balance it, I guess. When inherit the player's damage penetration stat, but no other stats. So if you have like say like arcane penetration, that's really great. Debuffs like stun, daze, freeze can significantly reduce the drone's damage output, so watch out for that, I guess, because I guess it can be stunned. Can be targeted by player talents like rush and thus be used as an escape button. So what this basically means is that like if like you have like say like an arcane blade and you put like your drone basically behind you, you can rush basically back to it. So it does have that sort of utility basically for it. So basically you can like get out of bad situations and resolve it. And the free turn duration of the drone runs on global time, so players with any amount of speed increase can usually hit the drone 4 times. So basically this runs at like say 100% like speed, and say if your character's base runs at 150% speed, it'll basically get like an extra hit basically resolve it, which is nice. All right, well, that was a nice little bit of like preamble about the Arcane Application Drone. That's definitely like I really don't use the drone myself, but it does have a lot of utility. You basically know how to use it. So it's probably basically an A tier talent. Well, I'll say it's basically B tier because it does require you actually use it tactically. So if you fail to actually use it tactically, then you're like just wasting like a prodigy like point basically to like they could have done something simpler, for example. But yeah, basically like that's that's basically where a prodigy really like you really want it to be, right? So right in the middle of the pack, and that's where you want it to go. It's good. It does what it needs to. And then we get the Arcane Might. So Arcane Might, by the way, is just another one that's just going to go right up to S tier. And it's actually going to go right above like this other stuff here as well. So let's read about it. So Arcane Might. Arcane Might basically requires that you have like no prerequisites, so you can basically get it all the time. And it's basically a passive ability that's basically always on. And what this basically does is it basically adds a 50% magic modifier to equipped weapons. So basically if you have like a sword, for example, that's normally going to have like say like 100% like strength modifier to it. This basically adds on top of that strength modifier a 50% magic modifier, so you basically have both the strength and magic modifiers to a weapon. So you basically hit for like that much more damage. And it basically increases your raw physical power by 100% of your raw spell power too. So basically if you have like a high spell power character like an arcane blade, you basically get both like your strength basically for like doing damage with, but you also get access to like the magic for your spell power and like your magic stat, basically boosts up your like damage even further. And on top of this, basically increases your physical critical chance by 25% of your bonus spell critical chance. So a little bit of gravy on top basically increases like your critical chance basically. So really just overpowered, really simple. and like, you know, this does all this like nice little stuff for you. This is definitely like, you know, the pickup for like a lot of people who basically suggest, and they even suggest like, you know, on like, you know, strength-based characters or like, you know, willpower characters, basically pick this up over like, you know, the other stats. Just like super powerful, can't go wrong with it. So if you're training any sort of magic, then this is like, you know, the go-to like, you know, prodigy for sure. If you're like doing like, you know, physical melee stuff. All right, Blighted Summoning. So this requires that you summon 100 times, and some more permanent summons can count as more than one. So Doom Shadows and Lich Shadows count as 2, Worm That Walks and Mechanoids count as 12 when initially summoned, and Alchemist Golems count as 100 when it's initially summoned. Okay, good to know. So the idea of like this talent basically boosts up your like, you know, your friends to basically be a little bit better. So your golem or summon creatures gain talents and bonus spell power equal to your magic. So let's just go talk about this a little bit right here. So the idea of like, you know, this like it basically boosts up like your guys to be a little bit better. Basically your infused blade energy to your summons granted and bone shield, which is like very, very powerful, and a bonus to spell power equal to your magic. So if you're basically like, you know, deal like necromancer minions like this skeleton mage, they'll basically be able to do like more damage to resolve it. Your wall of summons and necrotic minions will gain special corrupted talents, and other summons will gain 10% blight damage conversion and virulent disease. So first things first, bone shield is basically the ability that like, you know, corruptors basically have that basically circles bone shields around them. And until these like bone shields are basically knocked out, the like, you know, target can't be damaged at all. So they basically start circling around you, and they'll basically absorb one full instance of damage by basically being hit by it. So very, very powerful. And every like, you know, 16 to like 4.5 turns, a new one generates to basically get back like, you know, over time as well. Basically, this keeps your like guys alive a lot longer, so it's very, very nice for that purpose. But the real like, you know, meat basically comes from like, you know, all this stuff right here. So basically like your wild summers basically get like, you know, all this stuff right here. So you have like, you know, Nah. So obviously it's like the you know, the ghoul talent basically like, you know, summons ghouls basically like, you know, kill stuff. Does blight damage, which is very, very nice. Which is like, you know, not resisted by a lot of enemies as a result of like, you know, being blight. You have like Curse of Defenseless, that's basically like a corruptor talent. You get this basically in like, you know, usually defense and speed. Can't be saved against, so you know, they're always gonna be hit by the curse. You have Ruin, Acid Blood, Life Tap, Blood Spray, Poison Storm, Flame of Uruk, Elemental Discord, Blood Grasp. Basically, all this stuff basically does stuff, right? So, this basically does blight damage that will also heal you when you hit stuff, so it's good for Minotaur. You have Acid Blood here, it's basically like, you know, reduces the attacker's accuracy, at level 3 basically reduces their armor a little bit. So basically your army can basically do damage basically with the Acid Blood here. You have Life Tap, so this is like lifesteal and all damage, so basically keep your guys alive a little bit longer. Blood Spray. Who's the Blood Spray? That's the Hydra right down here, so basically another like, you know, spamming talent for him. Basically this makes him do like, you know, more blight damage as a result of like, you know, the other stuff basically here. And they'll actually like, you know, give him a round of disease doing like blight damage and weaken your constitution strength for dexterity, which is like, you know, nice little bit of cherry on top. You have Poison Storm from like, you know, the Rhyme Bark here. That's basically like, you know, the that's the summon that basically like freezes the stuff around him. So now you got like a Furious Poison Storm. Each creature hit by a storm will basically be poisoned, so they'll take nature damage over time, and basically be cumulative as well. So basically, like, you know, they'll be stuck basically like getting frozen as well as like, you know, poisoned, so they take like even more poison damage to resolve it. You get Flames of Uruk here, so basically turn like your what is it? Your Fire Drake into like, you know, demon. Basically gets a global speed increase, fire resistance increase, darkness resistance. Flames of Uruk will basically heal you. Elemental Discord for like, you know, the turtle. So using elemental damage dealt to you to trigger terrible effects on a source. So basically, like the turtle gets hit by stuff, you basically like, you know, it inflicts stuff right back. So you know the turtle's even more tankier. Not that it needs to be. Inspires Blood Grasp here, so you know that's what it basically does. So I'll note that basically like, you know, from like, you know, this right here, you're probably not going to use it for like your summons, by the way, but I mean, it does give him like the bone shield, which is basically like, you know, the main meat of what it's all about. And of course, it also does stuff for like your necrotic minions as well. So mages gain Bone Spear, archers gain Bone Spike. You got Ruin again over here for Skeleton Warriors and Bone Giants, and Bone Spike for Bone Giants. That's nice. Dredge gets Slumber, so basically put stuff to sleep. Ghouls get Virtual Disease. So yeah. And of course, also transfer to your summons as well. So your Alchemist like Golem can basically like, you know, convert like blight damage to stuff. Get some Bone Shield around it to keep it alive a little longer. It would be nice if basically this like, it was applied to yourself as well, I guess. But you know, it's not bad basically for like, you know, what it basically offers. So Blighted Summoning, it's basically one of those like, you know, summons that like, you know, isn't as broken as like say like this one up here, but still like good for what basically offers. I would like to see like improved a little bit, but I mean, it's not terrible for what basically has to offer either. It's basically around like the bottom like C tier I think right now, so that's where we basically throw it. So let's just throw it there. All right, we're finally down to Cauterize. So I'll note that part of the reason I basically made this video is because like Drib, who basically made his like project list, he rated this basically as like an F, and I'll note by the way as well, I really don't care for Cauterize as myself, but I really admit that basically is a powerful like project to be sure. And just to read about it here a little bit, Cauterize basically requires you to cast unfastened spells and receive 7.5k fire damage, so trivial for any mage basically to do. Now, the thing about what Cauterize basically is all about though, is that basically it's like a passive that basically keeps you from dying. And I mean like in the absolute sort of like metric of like it keeps you from dying. Basically the idea of like Cauterize here is that basically if you're hit for like more than like your life can sustain and you basically get killed, it'll basically take the hit for you and basically like trigger like a basically like damage buff that like ticks over time. So basically like you have like a burn for like 8 turns. Let's say basically you have like 500 health and basically hit for 1,000 damage to basically kill you. Basically be hit for like instead of like taking like that 1,000 damage, it'll basically like have your Cauterize to go off. It'll take like 1,000 of that damage. It'll basically deal back to you like 800 damage over time, like over 10 turns. So basically be hitting like hit by for like 80 damage basically each turn after that point. And you might think that like that's still like, going to result in a lot of damage to you, but it basically means that you have like more chance basically to react to like one shot and stuff like that, or like bad situations that basically just come out of nowhere. So I'll note that basically Cauterize basically like, it doesn't necessarily like keep you from dying, but it basically gives you like a lot more time basically to react to like bad situations that basically happen, and it can basically save your run if basically like run into something really bad. And there's like an argument that it could prevent you from it could prevent you from like getting like barely prompts to basically keep you alive in the first place. But for those who want to basically an oh shit button, it basically works just fine for what it basically does. So an easy A tier like prodigy, it deserves to be up there. Let's just call Cauterize for like what it is. It's a good like prodigy. Nothing really to say more about it. Let's close this off. All right, so we're now down to Ethereal Form. So have an effective defense of at least 40. So that's basically just stats. It's nothing really hard to get. So you gain 25% absolute damage reduction and 25% all damage penetration, which decreases when hit by weapons. Also, gain 7% of your magic or dexterity stat as defense. So Ethereal Form basically makes this here a little bit more like defensive, which is really great for like say a Shadow Blade or some like characters basically has a lot of defense basically on them. But the real meat of what this like project is basically about is like the absolute increase of like damage penetration. So if you basically have like spellcasters for example, you can basically get like absurd damage penetration, basically like penetrate like the damage like thresholds of like enemies like really easily with this. So you also get like damage reduction is really nice as well if like taking hits, but overall it's an awesome like project basically keep you alive. And I really wish I basically like, I had this like idea for like Corrupted Shell for example, but well, here's Ethereal Form for it. It does what it needs to do. It does it quite well. So let's just see here. Best basically is from right here. Ethereal Form is basically easily like one of those like A tier talents again. So I probably throw it basically around here. It's just a bit below like Vital Shot and like Giant Leap, but it's still very effective for like keeping you alive and like giving like some extra stuff as well while you basically keep it going. You just have to avoid being hit, and that's easy enough for a mage to do as well. So just like keep ranging stuff at range and like just destroy stuff basically. All right, Mystical Cunning. No traps or poisons. Alright, so this basically like lets you gain a mastery in like cunning and poisons, cunnings and traps. It reduces Venom Strike, cooldown by 3, and Lure cooldown by 5, and can use vulnerable poison and use gravitic traps. So I'll note that I consider Mystical Cunning to be like one of like the leftover like projects that needs to be like sort of reworked. It's basically for like rogues and like scoundrels and other stuff like that, but it really doesn't really do enough basically for what it's basically worth. Like basically it just could be like it's only available to like rogues and like those type of characters really, and that basically makes it really niche. But at the same time, it's basically better stuff you may want to get for like project wise for those characters, and it's not available for any other characters basically outside of that. Like if this basically has like stuff changed around, so like other people get like poison into traps, and like that could be like useful, and if you get like good like stuff for them, it could be useful for that purpose as well. But yeah, Mystical Cunning is basically one of those, like, properties that needs like a rework, I think. So that's for right there. Basically, it's just like, it's a project that's like, from like the, a time from before that really needs to be like, thought about again, I think. All right, so Revisionist History. So I'll note this is basically one of these like sort of like broken prodigies that, like, basically goes all the way up to like, S tier. So this is for up here. So what's the idea of revisionist history? So you basically time travel. So basically use time port 0.0 or use the talent that splits the timeline. So I'm not the idea of like revisionist history is that it basically lets you like start alternate timelines, and anytime you basically time during this, you can use unfold history to basically like return to when history was used. Basically, what this means is that you can actually like start fights, and then you can like possibly see how they're basically gonna go. If you don't like how they're basically going, you basically reset the timeline and basically like reset the whole idea of what's basically happened. As long as you basically don't die. I think if you died, and like it doesn't really matter, but it's basically like a way of like gaming the system, so to speak, to like really abuse like what you want to do. It's only limited to those who have time travel, so it's basically like, got that going against it, and it can only use like every 3 turns, but it's very powerful, like for you can basically use it for. I mean, it's basically like a free like for most part get out of like jail free if you have something difficult popping up. Figure out how to basically approach something and like do it better next time. So yeah, S tier up there. Not much more to say about it. It's just like it's good. It's basically stage of progress, so to speak. Alright, Temporal Form. Cast 1,000 spells and visit the Temple Rift, Paris Plane, or use the time port 0.0. So I'll note that Temporal Form basically turns into a Telegraph, a Telugorov for 10 turns. And that basically gives you the like properties of a time elemental. And I'll note that's basically considered to be like one of those like prodigies that's like it's basically like more for like, the monsters than I think is for you, but whatever. Basic idea here is that basically you get like pinning, bleeding, blindness, and stunning immunity, and you also get like 30% temporal resistance as well. Your temporal damage bonus is set to your current highest damage bonus, basically like temporal damage, which is basically not often resisted, and you get basically 50% of your damage you deal becomes temporal. So basically like you do a whole lot of temporal damage based stuff. You gain 20% temporal resistance penetration, which is like gonna mean you're basically able to like deal even more temporal damage if like stuff can basically resist it. And you can also cast these anomalies as well. So for what this basically does, by the way, just basically like actually boost up your ability to like damage stuff that like may be like resistant to like what you basically do. So basically, say an Archmage, basically like if you somehow basically like you manage to like get this basically going for yourself. Temple Rift basically I think is in like Daikara, yeah. If you basically get access to this, basically you're able to like deal like another damage type basically if you find yourself being resisted by everything else basically coming after, or for some other character basically has like those sort of issues where like everything is resistant, we basically have going free, but it just like, gives you like another option. It's not like a bad project for what basically offers, I think. So it's good for where it basically is. I wouldn't really take over your stuff here, but I mean it is pretty powerful. You basically look down, it's like stats basically how it's basically used. Especially if you can like make use of like the damage type basically to like inflict the damage. So I probably would throw it basically around like around here, for example, just above like Draconic Body, or below it. Yeah, basically throw it below like Draconic Body. It's basically like it's useful for like getting that temporal damage. So throw it around here, I think. Alright, that's basically it for like the magic and constitution based like prodigies. We'll basically follow up with willpower and like cunning in our video. But for now, we'll stop it here. Hope you guys basically enjoyed, and take care.